This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, Christina and Cheri. It's good to see you both. We had a great discussion back in April about why you both were running for a labor commissioner. But I'm wondering if you can start off again by telling us a little bit why you're the best candidate for Oregonians to vote for in November. And Christina, how about if you go first?
Sure, thanks. It's nice to be with you again. So I'm running for labor commissioner because I fundamentally believe that Oregon should be the best place to live, work, and own a business in this country. I've worked with BOLI for over a decade on behalf of employers and employees. So I have expertise that's going to help me get things done at BOLI. In my day job, I'm a small business owner running a civil rights law firm where I represent workers who are getting a raw deal when their employers are not following the rules that are enforced by BOLI. So I've also helped small businesses comply with those rules and regulations over the years. My parents had a small business in the community for 30 years, and now I have a business that I started at a kitchen table when my son was just 3 months old. I know what it's like to run payroll every month, pay my employees well before I pay myself, make sure they have access to benefits like paid sick leave, paid family leave. And I know that most businesses in Oregon are working hard to do right by their communities and their employees. And at BOLI, I think we have the opportunity to make it easier for them, hold bad actors accountable, help level the playing field. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with hundreds of everyday Oregonians, help them navigate the system to just make it work how it's supposed to. I've gone toe to toe with Wells Fargo, beat them in court. I've helped mothers who are wrongfully fired for being pregnant. I've helped small business owners who's just needed a hand to wade through regulations. And working families and small businesses are struggling with rising costs. And that's why I have a plan to expand job training, help businesses grow, create new jobs so that more Oregonians can find a good paying job, earn a raise, keep up with inflation. And I'm going to make sure that we're investing in apprenticeship programs, staff in our schools, construction sites, hospitals, enforcing the law to make sure everyone can access their rights, and empowering our employers to do the right thing, make sure they've got the tools they need to comply with the rules. And there's so much we can do to help employers, workers, and our economy as a whole if we're willing to look for big picture solutions. And that's what I'll do as labor commissioner.
Great, thank you. And Cheri, how about you? Can you tell us why you're running and why Oregonians should vote for you?
Yeah, thanks so much, Helen, for having me. Again, I appreciate this opportunity. I'm running because I believe Oregon has passed the tipping point and we're now to the breaking point. Our business journals and business pages read much more like an obituary lately than an economic celebration. And so I believe that it is time to have someone with my experience in charge of the BOLI Commission, because I think we have a real opportunity. One of the things that I like to say is that out of the worst of times comes the best of times. And we can really use this office to really change the direction that Oregon is headed. And we really desperately need change. My experience that I bring to the table is 18 years of owning a business that is deep into the labor supply and labor chain and all of the customer service issues that everyone is facing today. We see that over 1,000 businesses, 1,000 restaurants have went out of business in our state over the last 2 years. That's a lot of loss of jobs and opportunities. And I think what we need to do really is take that opportunity that we have and move towards change and move towards creating opportunities for Oregonians. We need to look at what the labor force needs to be in the next 50 years and start building those opportunities. We need to start in our school systems and in our career and college centers and in our CTE classes to make sure that we're offering the right opportunities and we're creating the path and the bridge to connect students with really high wage paying jobs. And I think that I am bringing the experience of being in the legislature and being on the school board for 10 years. During the time I was on the school board, we raised teacher salaries and we raised graduation rates by 10%. We can do that. And too many times we are pushed into a dialogue of either or. And there is no dialogue of either or that brings success. We do not need to be polarized. We need to have results. And that's the kind of experience that I want to bring to this position, and that I will. I want to have a results-driven bully commission office, one that doesn't make excuses for backlogs of cases of civil rights that are not being attended to, and one that creates apprenticeships and also talks about how many apprenticeships we create. There is no information on how many apprenticeships are offered in our state. And we need to make sure that that information is not only accessible, but is grown as well.
So I want to follow up a little bit on that. So why do you think those businesses are closing, and why are they issues that the bully commissioner can address?
Well, businesses are closing because they have been clobbered. Prices are high. We all know that. Personally, our insurance that we pay for our employees went up 19% this year. Wages are high. They've also increased 19%, but they're down 4% for what people are able to purchase. And so I believe that we have too much red tape, and that we are not supporting our small businesses enough. And there is no champion as space for small businesses. And so we need to make sure that we are communicating and that we are providing training for a labor force that works. For instance, we're 111,000 homes short in the state of Oregon. And what that translates to inside the Bully Commission is that we're 13,000 construction workers short. And inside the Bully office, that means we need 6,000 to 7,000 trained apprenticeship workers in plumbing and electrical. And until we create those jobs, we cannot create the workforce and the housing for the workforce that we need in our state. And so that's why I think the Bully office is a really important office. It's not an office that passes new laws or changes direction, but it's an office that can help support our workforce and make sure that we have the workforce that we need to build our future, as well as you see it in the chip making area. There is $280 billion being invested in chip making process across the United States. We need to make sure that we have a labor force so that we're competitive. Those jobs pay $135,000 a piece. And there's 10,000 of those jobs that Intel will be putting into Ohio. I want to make sure that we have the ability and workforce to bring those jobs here, because that tax base can help our schools and fund our roads. It's really important that we are competitive and that we cut the red tape and that we change direction from having too much red tape and regulation.
And so your focus is both in terms, I mean, are there regulations that Bully's overseeing that you would seek to roll back on?
Yeah, I think we need to work with businesses and make sure that they are getting what they need to create the opportunities and the high wage jobs that they need. And so that's what I want to do, is immediately conduct a large table conversation where we are talking about workforce. And the biggest thing that we can create out of Bully is stability. Our laws and rules around businesses have been changing regularly over the last few years. It started with the cat tax. And what happens is businesses pull back investments. And when they pull back investments, they pull back opportunities, and they're moving out of state. When they evaluated where restaurant workers are going, 20% of them have just vanished. Where have they left, and why? And we need to solve that and make sure that we are creating a stable environment where businesses feel they can come to Oregon and invest inside of our state, and make sure that we are business friendly to where they're comfortable. And then that's how the change happens, to make sure that our labor force is thriving.
Thank you. Christina, to talk a little bit more about Intel specifically, there's been a lot of concern about about Intel's decision to invest in a Columbus, Ohio area investment as opposed to grow their presence here in Oregon. Is there anything that you think the BOLI commissioner should or that you would do if you were elected to focus in on, and not just Intel, but chip making in particular?
Well, when it comes to these large scale projects, of course, we want to be able to deliver the workforce that is needed. And just looking at the numbers, I mean, we see that we are at full employment. When it comes to what economists think about in terms of, are there enough people want there, I think there's 2 job openings for every person seeking a job right now. So we know that there are labor force issues beyond the fact that we need a skilled workforce. So we absolutely need to be working at BOLI to create the pathways and actually have stronger partnerships with K-12 so that folks are even thinking about this career pathway. I know, my high school, kind of a rural part of Washington County, apprenticeships weren't even talked about as a pathway. And these are good jobs. I mean, some of them making, 6 figures, right? So I think BOLI needs to start early with that conversation, have a dedicated staff person whose job is to build those connections, make sure that people know about apprenticeships to begin with, because we got to start early. I mean, we're talking middle school and then pre-apprenticeship programs in high school. Hermiston High School has a number of apprenticeships that they've got going so that when kids are getting out of high school, they have exactly the credentials they need to get into apprenticeship programs so that they don't graduate and then have to go take more schooling and then go to an apprenticeship program. It's a seamless pathway. And so that those sort of things obviously start earlier. And that is what we're going to have to do in order to be ready with the workforce down the road for the next investments we need.
And Christina, let me start with you on this one. With apprenticeships are being talked about quite a bit, especially with the passage of the Future Ready Oregon legislation. BOLI issued the first round of grants to organizations that are going to expand or create apprenticeship programs. What does BOLI need to do to make sure that those are actually sufficiently training people for the industries we need? Like, what are the things that you would put into place to make sure that it's delivering on this $20 million investment from the state?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the $20 million is for pre-apprenticeship programs in healthcare, manufacturing, and construction, and then apprenticeship programs in healthcare and manufacturing. And we've seen the first round of funding dispersed a little over $2 million, a lot to community colleges, some to programs like the Iron Workers, who are starting a pre-apprenticeship program with Coffee Creek Correctional Facility. And so the legislature has put in place the parameters for the program in terms of the priority populations for that money to be targeted. But I think where we need to focus is number one, making sure that folks even know about this opportunity, especially in the industries that are targeted. Construction being a big one. We have quite a few homes to build, as we've heard. So making sure that it's not so insular that it's only just the people in the know that this money exists. And then number two, this is investment by all of Oregonians. So we have to be really good stewards of taxpayer dollars and make sure that when we're building apprenticeship programs, that what is being built is something that can be replicated, something that can be used further down the road, and that training isn't kind of captured for just one insular group's use.
Okay. And how about you, Cheri? I guess what are the things that you would put in place, or how would you be tracking whether these apprenticeship programs are being successful?
So first of all, I want to build a dashboard that tracks what kind of jobs that we need in Oregon, what the opportunities are, where the training is, how much the training costs, how long the training is, And we put that in place when I was on the school board, in our school board for metrics, so that you could see where math scores and reading scores and everything were. And it was very successful. And so I want to build that same type of successful program that I've built before in our school district, along with my fellow board members and administrators and teachers. And so we need to be able to track what type of positions are available and how much they are and where they're trained. But another thing that we need to do is just make sure that we have the facilities available. So when we're talking about chip making, we need fab space. We don't have fab space in our state for training. And so this really is about change, and it's about changing the dynamic. We've been the leader in the semiconductor chip manufacturing process in the country for years. And so we have not put in the space and been business friendly enough to be able to maintain even the jobs that are coming out of the companies that we have created. And so with this money coming, I am very concerned. It's not just Intel, there's many other companies. Last week I was in Medford and I met with a semiconductor chip maker down there. And what we need to do is look towards Wisconsin and North Carolina for their youth apprenticeship programs and start really putting these into the career and technical education system that we have funded through Measure 98, which I worked on years ago, along with Stand for Children, to make sure that we had solid career and technical education programs, because as education was being divested in our state with poor decisions, that was also one of the first things to go was career and technical education. And so that's why I think we have such a lack of labor force right now, and why we need to change this dialogue to make it more attractive for people and make people and show people that these are high wage jobs and that we can build this workforce. But if we look towards these youth apprenticeship program, there's only about 20,000 that are done in the United States, and 10,000 of them are done out of Wisconsin. And so we can build them from healthcare all the way through chip making, plumbing, electricians, and it's very important that we do that and change the path that we're going, because if people have stability and if they have security and safety in a job that they're going to invest their time in, they will invest their time. I think that's one of the biggest things that's happening in the workforce, is that people are not feeling that it's stable enough. And so we need to create the fab space, we need to create the youth apprenticeship programs, and then we need to build a bridge from the career centers so that we take the mystery out of what it means to get into an apprenticeship and on-the-job training and career training out of high school. And so I know that that will take a lot of workers from more traditional jobs that they go into, but I'm personally willing to give up a few dishwashers. Don't tell my husband that I said that, to get people into high wage jobs, because I think it's really important, and we can be part of that answer. And that's why I'm excited to be running for this position, is to bring those successful things that I've done in the school board for 10 years. I have 10 years of experience in nonpartisan elected official, and that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm running, is to bring some of those successful programs that I've already put into place along with my fellow board members.
Thank you. Cheri, right now there's growing tension between employees and employers about remote versus in-person work. What's your view of employers' authority to require workers to come back to the office?
I think that we rely on the free market. I don't think it is government's space to tip the scales on what is required of where work is. I think that is really up to each individual business to do and to figure out their path. And I think you're seeing a lot of people figure out what the path of work looks like. And it's one of the things that has been challenging for me. I am in a hands-on business, so we've never been in remote work. We were more in closed facilities where, we went down we lost 90% of our sales overnight when we were closed, and had to put people on unemployment, and the unemployment system did not work. And so that's one of the things that I want to bring to this office, is making sure that we're changing the fact that we have another agency that's not working. I don't believe that having a backlog of civil rights cases is acceptable. And so we can bring that change as well.
And Christina, same question for you. What is your view of employers' authority to require workers to come back to the office?
Well, when it comes to any of the rules that regulate employers, I think that BOLI's job is to make sure that employers understand their own rights and responsibilities. I mean, I think that is essentially the job of BOLI, because it helps us, empower people to do the right thing, so we don't even get into the complaints in the first instance. And so when we think about something like remote work, it's actually incredibly complicated, and a lot of employers don't know that. So if you've got an employee who is working remotely in California, you got to register with California, pay payroll taxes down there. If you've got folks that are working in their home office and have an injury, is it a workers' comp injury? So just letting employers make those informed decisions on their own by having all of the information available to them. These are the considerations that you're going to have to think of. Do you have appropriate workers' comp insurance? What are your policies regarding, having children in the workspace at the same time? Just letting employers know these are the things you should think about, and then they can, make the decisions with their own workforce goals in mind.
One example that came up recently is there are some City of Portland workers who sent a letter to the city commissioners saying that forcing them to return to the office would subject them to instances of overt racism or sexism in the workplace or during the commute. Do you think that factors into either BOLI's oversight of employers? Like, is that something that could be a complaint over which BOLI would have jurisdiction?
All employees are entitled to a safe and respectful work environment, an environment that's not polluted by racism, sexism, or any other discrimination or retaliation based on a protected characteristic. And that is true whether they work at home or work in the office. So if an employer receives information that during someone's work duties, they're receiving that sort of discrimination, then it's incumbent on the employer to do investigation and make sure that they've put in place a system to make sure that person is safe from that retaliation or discrimination wherever it may be.
So I guess you were saying even if it's occurring in the home?
If it's during work time, if it is a workplace issue, it could be, I think that you think of it the same way as if that person was in their cubicle. If they're experiencing discrimination in the workplace, and the workplace is the employer has determined that the workplace includes a certain designated place in their house, it is the employer's responsibility to keep that employee safe from discrimination.
Okay. And also, would you view the for several of these employees, they were saying that just the act of requiring them to come into work could subject them to instances of racism and sexism, for instance, along their commute. Is that a justifiable reason, do you believe, for employees to not have to come into work?
Well, I know you're picking on me because I'm the employment discrimination lawyer and been doing this for tens of thousands of hours, right? So I could give legal advice on this situation, or I could talk about how BOLI, would approach the situation.
Right.
I think,
and that's really what I'm looking. I'm looking for, and I'm going to pick on Cheri too with these same questions. But basically, I just want to get a sense of how is it that you would approach this situation. It is something that's playing out in workplaces across the state and elsewhere, and it's as you noted, a very tricky situation. So how would you help businesses and employees to navigate that very tense dispute?
Well, I mean, number one, I do think it is the role of BOLI to provide this advice, right? We've got 500,000 businesses or so in Oregon, but we've only got about 6 people doing technical assistance at BOLI. So technical assistance is the number where you can just call and get advice on whatever your employment situation is. So of course, I want us investing further in technical assistance as these situations just continue to get more complicated. We would advise them based on the law. And I think looking at factors about how courts have viewed commute time, whether they don't generally view it as work time, but that is the job of BOLI, is to give people the resources they need to make an informed decision.
Thank you. And Cheri, how about you? How would you approach this question of remote versus in-person work that employees and employers are grappling over? What's the authority, what's the obligation or responsibility of the employer, et cetera?
Thanks for the question, Helen. I think that this seems to be a unique situation to Portland, in that it's much more robust in Portland. It's not just happening in Portland, it's happening in other businesses around the state as well, and country. But I think that we need to work with the Portland Business Association and Portland businesses to make sure that Portland is a desirable place to come back to work. Because before the pandemic, it was a very desirable place and a lot of people valued working in Portland. And now what we've seen is not only workers not wanting to come into Portland, but also companies not wanting to come to Portland. You don't have to go very far into the business pages of all of the newspapers across the state to see how many of our businesses in Portland are moving or closing their headquarters. And so I think what we need to do is really work with our business community in Portland, work with our police associations and our police chief in Portland, as well as our mayor and our city councilors, to make sure that workers feel safe. There was a restaurant that was held up a couple of weeks ago or last week. I'm sorry, I'm losing track of time on this campaign schedule. But we need to make sure that our workforce is safe when they're in work. And I don't think that workers feel safe going into Portland. And so that, I think, is a big dynamic that we're dealing with. And so making sure that businesses have the resources to ensure that their workforce is safe and that people can come back to work safely, and that there's places for them to go to lunch when they come in, and places that are able to park that are safe. So I think that's a real big piece of what we're facing here. And that is what I would work on as Bureau of Labor and Industry Commissioners, to make sure that we're developing that robust workforce. Because the reality is when workers are happy, businesses succeed, right? And so that's going to be the dynamic. People are not going to be able to bring people back into work to an unsafe environment.
And Cheri, 4 years from now, if you are elected as commissioner, 4 years from now, what will Oregonians see as a result of your leading BOLI?
They will see a well-functioning agency, one that is accountable to its taxpayers, one that does not ask for any more money. I do not want a larger budget. I want to be very clear on that. I want to work within the confines of the budget that we have. I believe $35 million is a lot of money, and it can be used for a lot of good. I believe that we can enforce civil rights. We can communicate better to businesses, and by instilling more communication, we will lower the amount of claims that we have to manage. I think that this agency will have more opportunities. We will talk out of BOLI more about opportunities than we ever have. We will be connected with the employment department. We will be connected with the school systems, and we will be working on youth apprenticeships. We will be transparent. We will have publish how many apprenticeships are being fulfilled throughout our state. And we will make sure that it is working for Oregonians. And we will also make sure that we've weathered the recession, because in 4 years, I'm hoping that that is over, because we know that that's coming. We know that gas prices are up 40 cents this week alone. We know that insurance prices are up. We know that grocery prices are up. And we know that it is more expensive for people to live in Oregon. And we have to make sure that we have the housing needs that we need for our workforce, because workforce housing is a top priority and we need 111,000 homes. So we'll hopefully see that most of those are starting to be built and that the workforce is there. We will see more people having been trained in apprenticeships for healthcare. We will see chip manufacturing apprenticeships. We will see the workforce starting to be turned out, and we will be focused on what the next 46 years look like, because I believe that things are built in 50-year plans. And when I was on the school board, that's what we did. We built things for the next 50 years. I built 4 schools, all in prevailing wage, and helped manage those in my school board roles. And it is very, very important that you plan for the future, because if you do not plan for your future, you're just going to be reacting. And so what I want to do over the next 4 years is set up for the next 50 years of what our workforce looks like and business, so that our state and our economy is ready for whatever comes next. And that my kids, when they are out in charge of things, are ready and equipped.
And so you don't think, even with the complaint backlog, that BOLI is understaffed? You think that you have the people you need to execute on that, to execute on technical assistance, to grow the apprenticeship programs, et cetera?
I do. I think that we have to do things differently. I think the world has changed a lot. And I think we have seen BOLI function around about the same for many, many years. And it's not functioning well. And I am not endorsed by any of the people that have run BOLI. And that is because I want to bring change. I don't want to bring the same thing that we have going on there. And I think that I have run a labor force of over 104 people for many, many years. I'm not new to having a lot of employees. When I was on the school board, we had 2,200 employees in multiple unions. And we were able to, in the 10 years that I was there, move graduation rates up by 10%. That's a big accomplishment by a lot of people, but all it takes is the right leadership, and it takes change. And so my guess is we won't be doing things exactly the same way. We will be using technology in different ways that will help human capital be able to be used in its best format, so that we are helping people do their jobs better and feeling proud of the work they do, because they are accomplishing the things that they want and providing the services that they want to provide.
Thank you. And Christina, same question for you. If elected 4 years from now, what will BOLI be known for? What will Oregonians see as a result of your leadership?
Well, I hope the first thing that they see is that anyone who wants to earn a raise, whether or not they have a college degree, if they're willing to work hard, they're able to find a good job, right? I mean, most of our job openings right now, they don't require a college degree. We have a really amazing pathway through the apprenticeship programs, right, where you earn while you learn. You don't come out with a ton of debt. And making that connection and expanding the apprenticeship model to other industries, I think, is going to be really key. We've seen it moving to places like firefighting, childcare. We have long-term health aides, medical aides. We have folks doing drug treatment adjacent medical work. So these are all areas where we need growth in our jobs. So making sure that BOLI is providing that pathway, and that BOLI is providing that leadership too. I've been visiting with folks at the Oregon Business Council, Portland Business Alliance, folks that are thinking really deeply about our workforce issues because of course, we have acute shortages in, in healthcare, education, a lot of different areas, and those were not a surprise. We saw those coming, but there hasn't been the leadership to address, do the convening that needs to happen for folks to think through the next 20, 30, 40 years of what our workforce needs. So I think that is going to be a huge piece of what we do, is bring the people to the table to help build the workforce in our little area. And then to make sure that when people are in those jobs that they're safe, they're protected, discrimination-free environment jobs. And it's all real easy to say, look, of course, we all want good jobs, right? It's easy to say all of this, but I think the difference is that I actually have, as a business owner, as somebody who's worked with these laws for over a decade, who's worked with BOLI for over a decade, I can see really specifically what things need to be changed. So, I mean, we've got data. I've got anecdotal data, but BOLI's got data too about where employers are having trouble with the laws, right? Why wouldn't we use our own data to go and reinforce the areas that people are making mistakes and make it so they don't make mistakes again, right? Really simple stuff like, could we, if you go on BOLI's website right now, it's an enormous universe. I mean, the law in this area, it's probably like 3 inches thick, kind of, 10-point font, double-sided. I mean, there are a lot of laws in this area, right? And so an employer going on to the website, they think that whole universe applies to them. But if we can help them see, okay, you got 6 or more employees working in this industry, okay, these are the laws that apply to you. So you know what the laws are, and then I mean, really, checklists, flowcharts, make it as simple as possible. Send an e-alert when a new regulation goes out, so people know and are able to comply with the laws. I think that we talked. You heard a little bit. I think throughout this campaign about BOLI's backlog, and I'll tell you, I read a 100-year history of BOLI that someone put together, and it's been there, since the last Commissioner Stephenson. I mean, it has been a recurrent problem at BOLI, and no one's going to prejudge the situation, but I do look at certain factors like 500,000 businesses, 6 technical assistance folks. That to me feels like a mismatch. We've got 2,000 civil rights complaints pretty regularly every year. We're doing about, I think the last data I saw were 1,500 wage and hour investigations. So I'm just looking at the numbers and the fact that BOLI has less folks than it had in the 90s. And to me, if we want to, get results, if we want our investigations to be better and faster, I think all ideas are on the table, including increasing BOLI's budget. Great,
thank you. Did anyone else want to jump in with any questions?
Yeah, I had a question. Hi, Therese Bottomley, editor. Sorry, I was a few minutes late. The culture wars play out across the country, and they play out in work environments and business environments. And I know we talked about this back in the spring, but I would be interested to hear from each of you if you believe that people who have strongly held and sincerely held religious beliefs can discriminate against same-sex couples who might be their customers. Cheri, you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. And don't apologize for working hard. We won't hold that against you. So I think that what you are alluding to is basically the sweet cakes case. And I believe that you have to find a balance between the two. And so for me, I think that this case is very important because there are conflicting conflicting issues here: religious belief and civil rights. And so we have to find and strike a balance and make sure that we are not over-fining, as Bradavikian did in the case, and then it was overturned and brought back. And so I believe that that is a very difficult area, but one that you can find a space in. Thank you.
And just to follow up, what would that balance look like in that particular case?
In that case, I don't think we've ever struck a balance in that case. And I think that there was new fines that came down, but I still don't think it struck a balance. The business has left the state, and I don't believe that the people that didn't get the cake felt that they have been served either. So I think both parties in that case never felt there was a resolution. And I think you really just have to walk the line and do your due diligence on the legal research. And I, would of course work with the lawyers that would be on that case and make sure that we found the right balance.
Christina?
So Oregon's public accommodations law says that you can't discriminate. If you're opening your doors to the public, you can't discriminate based on things like sexual orientation. And when it comes to the sweet cakes decision in particular, I mean, this case could take up, a law school seminar. It is so incredibly complicated, and it's not done justice by sound bites, even things like, meditating on the fine. It wasn't a fine, it was a penalty. It's different. It was damages for emotional harm. It's different, and it's outlived 2 commissioners at this point. And we also know that it is being appealed to the Supreme Court again. So I want to be, cognizant of the fact that this is likely to come back to bully again. And we never want to prejudge any case. But to the general question, the law is an interesting thing. At one moment in time, it may say one thing, and the next it says a different. And all we can do is rely on the law that is in front of us and what the Court of Appeals told us. So, I mean, just to not belabor the very complicated procedural posture of the case, but the most recent statement from the Oregon Court of Appeals on this was that basically whoever's adjudicating this case is going to have to walk a tight wire. That's what they said, a tight wire. And when it comes to complicated legal decisions, I think that I have the experience and expertise to walk that tight wire.
Great, thank you. Mike or Laura, do you have anything?
I'll jump in with a question real quick. I'll be writing an article later this fall on the race, and we'll have more questions for you then. But I wanted to ask you one about, Cheri, you referred to the cooling economy. I wonder what changes about your job as the economy changes. We've been in an unusual situation, both heading into the pandemic when unemployment was historically low, during the pandemic when it was at a record high, and now we're back where we started, and we're about to it looks like we're about to switch again. What changes for each of you as far as the office's responsibilities in a cooler economy? We'll start with Cheri and then Christina.
Okay. I didn't know who you wanted to go to first.
Yeah, and I didn't specify. Sorry.
I met with Josh, the state economist, last week, and I think it's really important that we are abreast of this because we know how much inflation has hit our workforce. And Christina mentioned making sure that everybody has good wages, but that's not always the end of the story, right? Because our wages are up 19% right now, but what people are able to purchase with that 19% is down 4%. And that's because we have, many, many factors, but we cannot have more expensive policies put into place that would tip the scales on what is being asked of working families, because I think working families get the brunt of the inflation, and especially public working families, because our budgets, as I know from serving on the school board for so many years and in the legislature, our budgets are put in a biennium basis. And so those salaries are baked and set. And so it's going to be really, really important that we are nimble during a recession and that we don't bring any more red tape or expensive policies forward. And one of the things that my opponent has said she would like to do is enforce climate change regulations through the BOLI office. I think that would be very difficult. It's in your KBOO interview, Christina. And so I think that would be very difficult if we started changing the dynamics of BOLI and really pushing forward more expensive policies. And so what we need to do in BOLI during a recession is really open up training and apprenticeship programs, because that's when people are struggling with wages, they look towards higher wages. And so getting more people trained up and more people in high wage jobs is really how we get out of a recession, and that we're ready to make sure that when the economy comes back and people are ready to invest again, because with mortgage rates going up, that means car loan rates are going up, and other debt rates like credit cards and things like that. So the crunch will get much harder on our families that have less savings, and we need to make sure that we have training available for them and that we are very nimble. And so that's why I think this is such a important time that we're at, because we're coming off of the instability that the pandemic put forward, and that really made people's wages unstable. And that's why I believe there was so much movement in the workforce. And now that we're moving forward, we need to make sure that we're not bringing forward any new wage any new policies out of BOLI, just following the law and making sure that we're providing the training and the opportunity, and really delving into how to provide training and opportunities.
Thank you. And Christina?
Yeah, and just on the one point about BOLI enforcing environmental regulations, I'm sure that must have been a misunderstanding. I mean, this is an enforcement agency. It has a certain number of laws within its purview, workplace, housing, public accommodations, and the apprenticeship division. So this is not an agency where we can, where we're making laws, we're just enforcing existing laws. And in terms of, the cooling economy, if we're in a situation where people are starting to struggle to find employment, I understood that to be sort of the question, what is BOLI's role? So, I always think that when the need is obvious, our response should be obvious, right? So right now, even when people are coming to BOLI, a lot of them have just lost their job. And so why would we not make the connection with, the Oregon Employment Department and their workforce, training and getting people back into jobs? And I think that partnership still, is yet to be developed, and something that would probably grow during a time of high unemployment. And of course, when we're thinking about people who are looking for a new opportunity, we have our apprenticeship programs. I mean, we already know that people aren't knowing about those enough, but it makes a ton of sense for us to connect people with those and the pre-apprenticeship programs that precede them if those are necessary for people. So we know that there are nothing but jobs for opportunities. There's certainly a lot of opportunities to grow our economy in a lot of different ways. So I see us as being able to help train that workforce through the apprenticeship programs and connect people to the obvious resources that exist within the state to make sure that they can get quickly into a job.
Great, thank you. I think we're pretty much all set then. I did say that I was going to try to get you guys done before an hour, and we took most of an hour, but you get 8 minutes back of your life. So thank you. I will be in touch with any follow-up questions, but we anticipate coming out with our endorsement probably mid-October. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time and all that you do to keep everyone informed.